Alright gang, thanks for listening, thank you for your time. This is the last gasp, last minute, last ditch, last whatever you like, preview of the IV CROWN Showdown going down. Well, what is today? As I record this now, it's 4 AM, more or less, here in the UK. That's how late we're leaving this. So it's not going to have too much reach, but there we go. If you listen to it, thank you very much for doing so. Hopefully you'll be thankful you did. As I said, we're going to be taking a look down of the IV CROWN Showdown. Dmitry Bivol, Artur Beterbiev. Who is going to come out on top of this one? I've been umming and ahhing and toing and throwing and not been able to decide. 1 minute it's Bivol, next minute it's Beterbiev. But I do think I've come down with the hammer and decided once and for all who my prediction is going to be. I'll let that go soon. But we're also going to take a look at the undercard and something I wrote regarding the whole show which has been bugging me for a little bit, but we'll get into that shortly. But without further ado, won't keep you waiting anymore, we'll get down to action. The first thing I want to say is that in about 6 hours time from now, so 10 AM, I very much doubt this will probably be over by the time you hear this, but one of the bouts on the show, which was the IBF Junior Flyweight Championship fight between Szeremeta and Masamuchi Ibuki, is actually going down in Japan at about 10 AM rather than going on this show. That was a last-ditch movement, I do believe, just in case you didn't know that. That's a piece of news for you. But Ben Whitaker, Liam Cameron is the first fight we're going to take a look at. That's going to be early on in the show. I think the action gets down at 4 o'clock, but the actual main fights start about 5. Ben Whitaker, Liam Cameron. I think this is going to be the ideal showcase for Ben Whitaker. I think he's going to be switched on. I think we're going to see less showboating, more precise work. I think the promoters have got this one just right. I think Liam Cameron is going to be the exact amount of coming forward, and also the right amount of ring wear on his performance, which I think we'll see. I'm going to say Ben Whitaker's going to be stopping Liam Cameron in about the 5th round if everything goes to fruition. If he's not, if he's just more amateur than he is pro, and he hasn't ironed out the kinks in his game, and that stupid showboating, but some of it is actually not too bad at all, to be honest. But some of that, when he does that rocking back and forth with his shoulders, he almost looks borderline. Anyway, I won't say any more. But anyway, I think it's going to be all by the by anyway. And I think Ben Whitaker's going to get the job done in about 6 rounds, as I said, 5-6 rounds. Fingers crossed for him. Not that I'm a big fan. Not that I'd tell you, to be honest. I would like the upset. I wouldn't mind it if Liam Cameron turned it around and pulled it off. But I very much doubt if he will. Whitaker TKO. Then there was Chris Eubank Jr. and Kamil Szeremeta. Oh, well, we all know what's going to happen there. We all know that Chris Eubank Jr., if there's one thing he loves, it's an easy knockover with a high purse attached. No one seems to be able to rustle these up just like Eubank. He is unbelievable at doing so, and he's got another one here. His moves in the past week or so, or 2 weeks if you like, have been beyond desperate. This is a man who's got only a couple of rolls of the dice left, and I think he knows it. Hence why you saw him dressing up in traditional Saudi garb at the weigh-in. He's clinging on to that hope that the Saudis are going to think that he is a genuine superstar. Fingers crossed the Saudis can see through this. Time will tell. Unbelievable that the blatant pivot for Eddie Hearn, with Anthony Joshua losing in the not too distant past. I think incredibly Conor Benn has been pulled out of mothballs. We've barely heard his name out of Eddie Hearn's mouth in the past few months. But now when one cash cow has fell by the wayside big time for the time being, in comes another one, and suddenly Chris Eubank Jr., not Conor Benn, becomes the biggest fight in British boxing. Incredible how this happens. Wouldn't it be ironic that Kamil Szeremeta pulls off the upset and ends all that talk? It won't happen, we all know it, but wouldn't we love to see it? I would anyway. But I think this is, as I said, an ideal showcase. I think Eubank's going to be absolutely dialed in. I think he's going to be wanting to prove a point. I think he's going to be wanting to prove a point with the questions of Jonathan Banks as his trainer, which of course is a ridiculous move. Chris Eubank Jr. doesn't want a trainer. He just wants someone in whoever it is, if for whatever reason has seemed to be the hot thing at the moment or has some sort of pedigree in the past to be heading up his training team. He doesn't listen to whatever the person says anyway. It doesn't really matter. But as I said, I think it'll be a Eubank Jr. switched on, dialed in performance, and he's got just what he likes in that there's no real threat or jeopardy in the other corner, and it'll be a slight upgrade really in Tony Jetta, I think, in terms of the calibre of opponent in Szeremeta, and Eubank Jr. will get the job done, I think, we'll say inside 7. Anything less than that will be a disappointment, I think. Raven Chapman and Sky Nicholson. I'm going to move on quickly. Who gives a damn, to be honest, really, other than there's the Queensberry and Matchroom element to it. But this brings me on to something I wanted to bring up as regards the weigh-in. Are these Riyadh season weigh-ins ceremonial? Is there some sort of confirmation? I've looked, I can't find it, because it's just suspicious. Every single Riyadh season card we've had so far, I don't think a fighter has missed weight. We haven't even heard any news of this fighter failing a drug test. It's almost as if these cards have some sort of stage management going on. I've got no confirmation or proof of this. It's just a theory of mine. And one of the reasons we hammered this home was the weigh-in between Chapman and Nicholson. They weighed in fully clothed, full face on. There was no doubt the only thing they were worrying about is what they looked like on the scales. They weren't even trying to make weight. It's bizarre. And when I look back at some of the other, like Bivol and Beterbiev at the weigh-in, they were fully rehydrated when they weighed in. Not that there's anything underhand going on with that, it's just I think as fans that we need to know what's going on. And it's just, everything appears to be so stage managed, and as I said, the rehydration possibilities when the fighters weigh in gives the best possible opportunity for the photographs, which gives the look of the event real resonance, rather than having maybe one or two or a few fighters on the whole card who have sucked in looked and gaunt and looking at the scales. That could be a reason for it. But anyway, that's something that raised a question within me, and I just thought I'd verbalise this out loud. Are they ceremonial or not? And that moves us on. Jai Opataya and Jack Massey, we'll move on to that. But that's another one. Not that I'm going to say I'm not interested in it, but this one seems to me as if it's made for Jai Opataya. Nothing against Jack Massey, and in a way I hope he does pull the upset off, but I don't think he will. If Jack goes the full 12, it'll be an achievement for him. This is a showcase fight for Jai Opataya, in my opinion. Which brings us on to the main two, and we've gone from not too much really going on the undercard to the top two fights. In my opinion, are two of the hardest to call that we've had in some time. They really are top-notch fights. I went back and watched Fabio Wardley and Fraser Clark, the first fight from earlier on in the year, during the week, and it was one of those fights which actually does hold up on a second viewing. It was absolutely brutal. Went this way and that. Probably the best there we go, so whatever you like to say, the best British Heavyweight Championship fight that I can recall in all my years of watching them. Unbelievable stuff. When I watched back the first one back, something that screamed out to me was that was a fight that was Fraser Clark's to lose. And because he didn't lose it, but he didn't win it either. He has the better pedigree, the better form, and if he can get his conditioning in order, I can get it out in the end. First day with my new teeth, conditioning in order, and get a little bit more devil about him. He hasn't got enough arsehole in him, if you know what I mean, in my view, for him to get the full bearing of his achievements or his wares. And I do think that could potentially hold him back as he moves up the ladder. But as you can probably tell by my chat, I'm going for a Fraser Clark victory in the rematch, providing, of course, that nothing has been taken out of him too much. I think that nose of Fabio Wardley's could open up. It was almost opening up from the first round in the first fight. Also, another element is the Ben Davison element. There's going to be some questions on him going into this one, especially as regards with Anthony Joshua losing out in his last high-profile outing for the Davison Academy. So there'll be a lot of interest in what goes on there. And something I will say is that if it's a totally different fight to the last one, and Fraser Clark wins inside schedule, say inside 6 rounds, there will be a lot of scrutiny, I think, on that gym. So that moving us on to the big one, Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. As I said, you can't find too many more 50-50 fights in the recent past. And this week, up until this week, I have been leaning towards Dmitry Bivol, but yes, I have switched my prediction. I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to go for a Beterbiev win. Not that that's against the grain, but I'm going to say Beterbiev in an absolute classic on points. I think it's going to be a bit of a different fight than what we're thinking it's going to be. I think these are two men that have come through that Soviet system. Is something that we've heard a lot, Soviet style, over the past week or so. It's a new piece of lexicon for the boxing world. But I do think that there's going to be an element of this coming into play for the fight. There's almost a 6-year age gap between the two. I think it's 5 years and 11 months. Dmitry Bivol, two-time Russian champion, Artur Beterbiev. By the time Dmitry Bivol was winning Russian championships, Artur Beterbiev as an amateur wasn't even competing in the Russian nationals. Such was the gap between them in age and seniority. Artur Beterbiev, I do believe, had retired from amateur boxing by the time Dmitry had actually won the Russian nationals for the first time, which kind of gives you the indication of how much distance between them there is. I've heard a lot of chat regarding the amateur days between the two. They never fought as amateurs against each other, and as I said, it's more the case that Beterbiev was the senior more than Bivol. I don't think Dmitry ever entered into what you call a European World Championships, or never entered in the Olympic Games, that's for sure. Beterbiev was winning the Europeans by the time he was 21, so there's definitely a little bit of an amateur pedigree thing going on when you break it down, and I think that will be the difference between the two. Bivol has constantly worked that, as we said, that Soviet style, that distance boxing centric angles and the basic punches. Not that he's excellent at it, one of the very best. He's a joy to watch, one of the very best to watch. His performance against Canelo was scintillating, but I don't think that's going to be enough against Beterbiev. I think Beterbiev can do that as well. There's elements in his fights, especially that last one against Callum Johnson, where his footwork is just as balletic as what Bivol's is. Beterbiev, though, has that extra piece of seasoning, I would think, he got gained from competing against amateurs, quality amateurs from all over the world, something which Bivol didn't do to the extent that Beterbiev did. And also I think Beterbiev, the performance against Alexander Gvozdyk in his unification fight a few years back, I think is going to be the type of style and the type of fight that I think Beterbiev is going to employ. This time I don't think, of course, that Beterbiev is going to be able to get the finish. But as I said, we'll leave it at that. We'll do a post-fight. Fingers crossed, all things going as they should be. We'll do a post-fight after the events tomorrow night. But yes, so we're going to leave it with that. I think that Artur Beterbiev is going to unify and become the undisputed light heavyweight champion by virtue of, we'll say, a unanimous decision in a classic fight against Dmitry Bivol. We're going to see some of the classic behind-the-head shots that Beterbiev uses so well, and against the clean, pure game of Dmitry Bivol. I think that roundedness, that spite, that extra piece of devil is going to be the difference between the two, and it's going to be a great show. Especially the last two fights are going to be absolute classics. That's it from me. That's the LVD Sport preview for the event. Bit dry, I know, but there we are. That's just the way it goes sometimes. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for your time. And of course, subscribe if you liked it. And keep an eye on when we come back for more. And until next time, keep your gloves up and your chin down. That's LVD Sport out for the count.